Friends of Sacred Frames. I'm Jeff Cook, Sean Palmer, Mike Yeager. It's good to see you.
Hey,
Movie Mike.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeager.
not movie Mike. I had actually gotten used to it.
You will notice the absence when it's gone. You're like, oh, it felt so good.
You were testing. Exactly. I fell right into it.
Never has branding been so easy and Mike been so resistant. It's the Enneagram 4 in him just alive and active.
Well, we are talking about Jaws because it is the 50th anniversary. There's a re-release and a rightful celebration of one of the great films that's ever been made by the great Steven Spielberg cast and crew. When you think about Jaws, big picture, like what's the first thing that comes to your mind on when you come to this film?
So I mean, this is going to sound like an obvious answer, I guess, and it is. I think of Steven Spielberg. I think of like who has been the preeminent filmmaker of certainly my lifetime, and if I were to look back, year on year, I think his films consistently rise to the top of any given year. He is just a master, and this is him kind of like the first time really getting to fully push forward with the fullness of those gifts, and to do so on a greater scale than obviously he had with Duel, with Sugarland Express. So it's, it is classic for a reason. We'll get into it.
And for me, it, as someone who, in the last, unlike you all, has celebrated their 50th anniversary of of being alive.
Getting close over here.
This was the first summer blockbuster movie, the first historical popcorn blockbuster film that has made the template for what we have all experienced all our lives with summer movies. And a summer blockbuster is it is its own genre of movie. And Spielberg did that. And when I think about that, I think about the fact that this sounds like nothing now when you think about something like Superman or Fantastic Four this summer. It opened on 450 screens simultaneously in 1975. That was unheard of. Most of the people listening don't remember that films used to be actual films on these huge things, and they would go from town to town, So like you had to watch it in your town when it was there. You had to go to the picture show, and it's a reinvention of what cinema is. And I've been like, I don't know if you've been to the Hollywood studios. We've toured it twice, my wife and I, and the Jaws part of the tour around the back lot is so freaking cheesy, but it is so crucial to what movies and cinema are. So I always think, when I think about Jaws, I don't think about the movie. I think about the birth, right? That this is John Williams' birth, right? He was known as like Johnny Williams before this. Steven Spielberg's birth, like this is what gives him a blank check. The birth of a new genre of film, which is the summer blockbuster. So it redefined everything we know about cinema, particularly in the summer.
Yep. When I think about American art in the 20th century, or perhaps Western culture art, I think of film, rock and roll, and jazz. The greatest artists of the 20th century in my mind that come to my mind are in collaborations. It's McCartney and Lennon on the rock front. It's Davis and Coltrane on the jazz front. And I think superseding them is Williams and Spielberg. I think that in my mind, when I think of the great artists of the 20th century, who specifically Americans, those two men pop immediately to mind. But when they get together, that is like the height of some of the artwork being produced by our culture in the last 50 years from these two men. I think they're at that level for me. So, and this is the beginning. Yeah. Did he do Duel? Did they do Duel together?
No, I do not believe so, but I'd have to double check. But it's like first $100 million grosser, lines around the block. And I think that it's an important, not important necessarily, but I think it's a very, I think it's a very fleshy topic for us because we are now living 50 years on into this box office blockbuster project
Yes.
for both better and worse. And there's a lot to and maybe I'll just fit in this quick word here at the top, Jeff, of we've covered to this point, Superman and Fantastic Four and Weapons, these newer films. We want to dig back into the wealth of conversation around classic film, because there is just truly an embarrassment of riches that allow us into these deeper questions. And people don't really get to the theater as much as they once did. We're trying to encourage that because that's something that we certainly love to do and want it to stick around. But we understand that there is a lot of things vying for our time and attention these days. And so it's for that reason. And also these movies, as we'll see, speak differently to an audience in 2025 than they did 1975. Some things are similar. Some things have grown heightened. And I think above all of that, you have someone like a Spielberg, like a John Williams, who are elevating the material. They don't view this as a disposable entry. They're really careful about why these notes, why this camera placement. It's the thing that tends to fall by the wayside in our more modern blockbuster construction, because it's all about the bottom line and making $1 billion. 500 million doesn't cut it anymore.
That's exactly right.
Right.
Bang. Well, coming to the movie, there's all sorts of things we could be talking about thematically. Who wants to jump in first? Like, what is a theme that really hit you watching the movie? This is what I want to talk about.
So I always have this look into the world of filmmaking in the times when I was alive. So 1975, I'm watching Jaws and thinking, there are no Black people in this movie. And I grew up on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. And I know certainly that Black people went to the beach because I was one of them, right? And so I think about all of the pushback in modern day civilization, or at least in modern day America and some segments of it, about everything being woke. And I grew up thinking, wrongfully thinking, that the civil rights movement and King and all of this, even though I could add at one point, was almost like ancient history and like fights that we had already had and everyone was just kind of over. And when I look back at these movies from the 70s, and I would encourage anyone, if you're 45 plus, to go back and watch the cinema of the 70s. On my Substack, I did a movie about what the movies of the I did a series about what the movies of the 70s can teach us. And I was just kind of amazed at the cast and how unconcerned people like Spielberg were with representation at all. Mm-hmm. And then I think about shows that my wife watches, like on Hallmark, that are like in the 1800s, and they're concerned with representation. I was like, well, no Black folks around hanging out with these people, like going to the dance hall, and like what that says about kind of our time. And so it just made me think, okay, like a studio produced this movie and it made a lot of money and reset what a movie could be and do. And they were not thinking at the time that minorities and women would go or not go see this movie to see or not see themselves. And it just kind of like, it pops off the screen to me at this point in my life. So I think that's one of the interesting conversation pieces around that movie, especially around a movie that is one of the big themes about what's hiding underneath, and trying to make itself known. So for whatever that's worth, I don't know. What do you think about that, Jeff, Mike?
I'm real curious on, because rewatching it, one of the themes that came to my mind here was diversity in a different kind of sense. There seems to be a lot being said, or at least underneath, about class, about education. It seems like, for example, Quint is not welcome in the island community. He's kind of an outsider who's living there. Certainly Hooper's from outside, and certainly Brody's from outside. and they're not part of the white business interests who have a financial entrenchment in the island community. That was what I actually wanted to ask you.
Yeah, there's an interesting overlay with American history, right? So, it's like African Americans in America have been the outsider, only people group that are here against their will, right? But the North doesn't win the Civil War without African American troops. The South doesn't become an $8 billion industry pre-Civil War without African Americans. So many of the medical tests, you look at like Tuskegee syphilis tests and other tests done in the same way. The first person to receive a COVID vaccine was an African American woman. It's like the rejected of our society are the ones who are called to protect and build our society. And you get this again in Jaws with Brody, with Quint. Like, you're not from here, and part of the gift that you offer is you're not from here, so you are not embedded in the practice of our own stupidity. Right, because what you get is scene after scene of the Islanders functionally being stupid. Yep. Right? Like, that's a dumb thing to do. And yet there's this trio, there is this trinity of people who are more invested, and Quint's there for financial gain, which is probably why he meets the end that he does, who are more invested in your salvation than you are yourself, because you are more invested in continuing the traditions of your community and your economic interests than in the actual people in your own community. So there's like a lot going on there. And I don't know that Spielberg intentionally is doing any of that, or if there is something inherent in history or in humanity where we're like, this is the way it always has been for us to be safe. It's almost like American history, right? Like we have to have the French to win the American Revolution, but during the French Revolution, we're like, nah, we're good. Like, no thanks. We're not sending anybody. It's just an interesting conversation to have around the way the film unfolds. So the readiness to receive outside help for our own benefit and still treat outsiders as outsiders.
It feels like a throwaway line, or just maybe it's like a culture building line, but I think you're right in terms of Spielberg may not even know that he's putting his thumb on this. But one of the locals says to Brody's wife, you can never become an islander. You have to be born here.
Yes.
And we're special and you're not. It's all is just dripping off of that. I think you're exactly right. And then perhaps we could talk about motive. They clearly all believe that they're kind of risking their lives at some level. Yeah.
Are we jumping to Act 2 already?
We certainly can.
I was about to say we might, for people like my daughters, right, who are like, what is Jaws about? Mm-hmm. So we might want to do like a quick recap. So I'm going to leave that to Mike. Just what is this movie? Like, what's the narrative arc of this film?
We are on Amity Island. Opening scene: a skinny dipper meets her end as her drunken would-be paramour passes out on the beach, and so we've got a shark on our hands. Chief Brody, new to the community of Amity, is in charge with stopping this, and it is nearing the 4th of July, which means that soon the tourists will descend upon Amity, and the mayor, I suppose the big surprise, the villain, not the shark, the mayor, the villain of the film. Refuses to shut things down, leading to a series of casualties, which then results in Chief Brody and Hooper and Quint taking to the high seas to bring the fight to our buddy Bruce, the swimming beast.
Yes, Bruce is the name of the shark, who is actually named after Steven Spielberg's
lawyer.
Yeah.
Named after the lawyer.
Which is so funny if you connect that Bruce the shark being named after the lawyer to the line in Jurassic Park where he says the only one's on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer. You definitely get the feeling that Steven Spielberg is not a fan of attorneys.
It's also an easy joke.
It's timeless. It's you can make that joke in 1990 or 1975, whichever works for you.
So I do want to get to the three guys and their motives. But can we start with just the setup of what's going on in Amity? Because we talked about the insider outsider piece, and we were talking a bit before recording that this film, the events depicted, have a string of like blinding parallels to a season of life that we've all walked through in recent years across the world, and the COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, and there is the languaging all over their motivation for not shutting down. What are your thoughts initially on the mayor and the powers that be that are really kind of driving the plot in this first hour?
I have a heavier take on this, I feel like. So I don't know if there's an easy one, but I'll overwhelm.
So Jeff's gonna go dark. So I'll go.
We can. Sean can go. I'll go, and then we'll build up to your. Yeah, there you go. All right, perfect.
But as on rewatch, having lived through COVID, it's nearly the exact same arguments for being anti-mask, anti-closing of things. Like our lieutenant governor here in Texas, who famously said, like, grandma, something to the effect of grandma would be glad to go to work if it kept the economy going, right? And those are the arguments for the mayor and a good number of the people in Amity. They make a good bit of their living. I remember here at the start of COVID, we have in Houston, Jeff, the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and it shut down. Everything in Houston shut down right in the middle of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And there were, and I feel badly for them, a number of vendors who say, like, we make 3.5 or 3/4 of our yearly revenue at this event. Like, we don't know what we're going to do. And so there's part of me that that's a very real anxiety for people to have. It's like, how am I going to survive? And so in Amity, it's 4th of July is coming. If they shut down the beaches, that shuts down all the stores, all the revenue. If you rent surfboards, if you sell sandals, all of those things, you really need that 4th of July weekend probably to make it through the rest of your year. So it's a real concern. But I thought this movie could not be made now without being called woke, because we've had COVID. And the people who were against any sort of slowdown, lockdown, let's take it slow, let's figure out what we're doing, they would be very much against it. And, Quint comes along at the beginning and he says, I'll hunt this thing down for $10,000. And they say no, which, if you're just doing the math, that's about $60,000 in today's dollars to hunt this thing down. And why? They have an economic interest in him not doing it. Like, they don't want to pay him because they think it'll probably be okay. And we talked about this with weapons. There is a persistent piece of American working philosophy, like what we actually do, that says we're okay sacrificing our children if we can still make money. Yeah. And they do it in Jaws, just like we did it at Sandy Hook, like we did it in so many other places along our journey, to say, and if we could, early on in the film, there's another shark that they find and kill. It's obvious for a number of reasons that this is not the shark. We have a whole debate about follow the science or not in 1975, right? And because you're just a rich college boy, we're not going to listen to you, which leads to more carnage and more death. And if they made this movie now, it would be too on the nose, but we got a heads up 47 years before COVID. Yeah.
So let me talk about the mayor for a minute. This guy, this is the guy that says, no, we will be open on the 4th of July. There is no question about it. And Chief Brody, after the first casualty, he says immediately, no, we've got to close the beaches. And as an outsider, he doesn't have the clout to do anything other than capitulate to the mayor who is saying, no, this is all psychological. And his first decision, the first thing we see him do is to suggest the falsification of the records involving the death. And later on, to go back to the insider outsider thing, like, these aren't our people, these aren't my people, they're from all over the place. Like, look at the license plates. And the moment that really there's two moments that I think that really, like, show me who this person is and who the community is. Like, the central theme being, how do we as communities respond in a crisis? Like, there's one where the older board member emerges from the water. He's kind of the first red herring in the subsequent attack that leads to, again, the death of the innocents, the dog and the small child, Alex. But this old man has kind of come up out of the water, and he makes a beeline straight to Brody. It's like, no, this thing is now pursuing Brody onto dry land, not just his feared place of being in the water. But even worse than that, the grieving mother that comes up to Brody afterward. And she can't do anything about what has just happened, but she says to Brody, you knew that it was dangerous. You knew there was a shark. You did nothing. My son is dead, and I need you to know that. And you can see that wash over Brody. But the very first thing the mayor does is apologize to Brody.
Right.
It's all about the preservation of the civic identity over this being any sort of real community.
And that's a scene that's echoed right in Captain America: Civil War. When mother approaches Tony Stark and says, like, my son is dead. And one of the things that makes Tony Stark a hero, who in the end, in Endgame, gives himself up, is that he is changed by that conversation, which has a lot to say about how we respond to the grief and the pain of others.
Right. So I went into COVID very much like elevating Jaws as prototypical of, this is a movie we need to learn from in a situation like we found ourselves in. And one of the things watching Jaws afterwards, there is the dangers that are seen that science is going to expose, but then there are the unseen dangers. And one of the things that I would love to elevate, and I don't actually know where to land here, it's a place of confusion for me, was there are a handful of casualties that occurred from COVID that had nothing to do with the disease. They had to do with our responses. Part of that is tearing apart of society, but part of that is something that we experienced in our home, which was the anxiety that we injected into our children in terms of their mental lives and their connection to culture and to themselves. And so we had real issues on this front. And I know many people, had lots of issues in terms of there's self-harm and the rest really went up during this season. And the secondary effects are also real when a culture makes big shifts. And I think what Mike was saying about how do we respond in a crisis is actually the thing that is needing to be talked about more. And it's the place that our society is deeply unhealthy.
Yeah.
We don't know how to respond to a crisis because we don't know how to communicate anymore. And that makes us weak and it makes us vulnerable, and it is doing destruction to our children and to the old. And when watching, there will be terrors that arise from the unseen realms, and we don't have the ability to fight them because of who we've chosen to be.
Yeah. And so, I mean, not to get too academically theological here, but we do have these three outsiders who go to fight this shark. And so, if you're just bored on a Sunday afternoon, Mark Himes Saved from Sacrifice, right? So theologically, what the community needs for equilibrium is a scapegoat. And for a scapegoat to function, they have to be enough like us for the sacrifice to be meaningful, but enough unlike us that we don't care. right? And so who does Amity send out but these three outsiders?
Yep.
Which I would add to, Sean, it's not just the outsiders that are not safe, though. This system eventually reveals the insiders also as being unsafe. Maybe the most terrifying moment of the film is the mayor sending the councilman and his family into the water, saying, "Why aren't you swimming? The mayor's not going to be swimming, but you, councilman, you need to be out there." And you can see just this horrified foursome, this family that is forced out into this this water to be a sign that everything's okay.
Mike, and that's why no black people are in this movie. Because if that councilman had been black and the mayor had come and said, like, why aren't you swimming? He would have said, why aren't you swimming? Like, you get out there and you go swim and then we'll come back. Like, I'm not even gonna be at the beach. Like, I stay at home. Like, it's the 4th of July. Like, and that is so what humans do, like, throughout history, is like, let's identify. We are going to call the people we are going to sacrifice both wrong and invite them to be our heroes at the same time. And if they had killed the shark and the boat had come home empty, the mayor would have performed memorial at City Park at the center of town, talk about how heroic they were, and the mayor would have taken credit for making a bold decision.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, like, but what's interesting to me, because I don't think Spielberg in 1975 is sitting around someplace thinking about all of this, is that so ingrained in who we are as a people, who we've become as a people, that just seems to be the natural story to tell that everybody will accept and everyone will believe.
Yeah, it's the thing that hit me watching this movie is how realistic all of these characters are. Like, all the tertiary characters are real. This is a real person in our world.
I have met them. Like, even Brody, who once, you get a couple shark attacks, tells his son, hey, he's got a son, like, coming into early adolescence. And it's like, man, I don't want to go to the pond. The pond's for old ladies. That is something that a preteen boy would say. And something that a father would say is like, hey, just go to the pond for the old man. Right. Like, that is something that a father would say.
But it's something the shark going into the pond is what actually catalyzes Brody to carry into that's his call into the wild. It's because it has become personal. So he's not a great hero either necessarily. He's kind of following just by the letter of the law and within the constraints of his role, but it has come home to him now.
Yeah. And I can't remember who it was in the cast who said to him after that attack, like, I have a son too. And so
I think it was the mayor.
Yeah, I think it was it's like, is that what it takes?
Yeah.
Like, seriously, as humans.
My kids were out there as well. Yeah.
Like, do I have to feel this personally to enter into the neighborhood of the right thing to do for others? So my economic interests are no longer my primary interest. Now my relational interests are primary. And, like, I just didn't give a crap about your relational interest until now, or the young woman who was killed, the son who was lost. Like, I think that's a mirror that we all have to, like, at what point, how close to our own shores does something have to get before we bother to care?
I think what you're elevating is correct, that what needs to be named is we need to mutually, holistically sacrifice for the sake of the least of these. We need to elevate the lowest together and have that be our communal response.
This is why the familial language in scripture is important. Like, you should care about people you will never know, you will never meet, and you should care about them kind of the same way you care about your own children, not because they're your own children, but because they're God's children, right? And God cares about them as much as God cares about your own children. And that's a hard hurdle to get over if you just look contemporarily at what has it taken for American evangelicals to start to care about Gaza.
Yeah.
Like, why does it take 2 years for you to say, oh yeah, it's probably wrong to just bomb children? And like the gospel implication was like, you should have cared about that on day one. And so these kinds of stories are inviting us to see, like, are you someone like the mayor? Are you going to care about your own interest? And you clearly have shifting interests, which we see in America all the time. Are you going to live a kind of principled life about doing the best for the most all of the time? And it takes an outsider to point that out to you and to solve problems for you, because you won't see them as a problem until it becomes a problem for you.
And I would add to that, I think it's all well stated, but it's also a matter of entering into a place of collaboration, that whatever the solution is, we cannot happen upon it on our own. And so not only does it require one outsider, it requires these 3 outsiders, which I think like now might be a time for us to shift into their motives and how they may differ from what we're seeing in Amity itself, while we're now getting out to sea to face the beast into the, we've talked about it with weapons in the basement. We talked about it with, the thunderbolts and the void. Like, we always have to go into the cave. It was something Jordan Peele said in the Jaws at 50 documentary, that like the best horror films are a horror that is tailor-made for its protagonist. And we've been told that Chief Brody is terrified of the water. Even as one of these early attacks is happening, we see him kind of like barely put his toes into the water and then kind of back away. Like, he has a total aversion to it, but now there is nothing else to do but then to boat up with Quint and Hooper.
Well, and it's, I think I say this like every episode, but, and because it's such a core of storytelling, right? The treasure you seek is in the cave you fear to enter, or the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek. Right. So it's just not just a storytelling metric, but a life metric. Like, oh, how am I going to grow? How am I going to expand? Oh, that thing that I fear, I have to go into there to grow, develop, learn, expand. And so he has to go into the water with people that he does not want, he would not be on land with. Right. Right.
Yeah.
So he's got to embrace all of it.
So my favorite scene, and this was a new experience for me, my favorite scene of the entire film in this go round was, so they're in the boat together, and there are these early scenes of them just being so catty at each other. These are 3 men who don't trust each other. They do not respect each other. They all feel like they're functionally kind of the one in charge of this, expedition. And the scene early on where they get their first real shot in at the shark, and they do that together, and they've shot the harpoon at it. And there is a sense of like triumph to that scene, but I think it's triumph because you see these 3 individuals discover that they are more of a unit than they first assumed. And they're actually like, they're not working against one another. They are working complementary to one another. And Brody's bringing the pragmatism, and Hooper's bringing the natural, orientation to the wild world. And Quint is like this prophet figure. Like, I don't see him driven by money so much as enough money to be left alone.
I want to talk about Quint's motive a little bit more, but that ends up being, I think, spot on. When they see the shark for the first time, they are filled with awe, especially Hooper and Quint. They know that this is a different kind of obstacle than they had anticipated, and the awful, as it were, filled with awe side of them comes out in that. And I think that's a bonding moment, as you were saying. There's nothing unites a people like a common enemy image that comes together there. There's another bonding element I want to talk about here in a second, but I love that scene. I think you're right in bringing it up. The other bonding image is that something else that bonds us is sharing our scars. Those are back-to-back scenes.
And a very interesting decision that that Brody makes, because there's such humor with Hooper and Quint kind of trying to outdo one another and showing all of their scars, and that's even more kind of humorous when you know just how much that Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss were on each other's nerves during the entire making of this film. But I love the moment where Roy Scheider, another great performance, all that jazz, is like one of my favorite films of all time. But when he takes a short look at his own stomach and he thinks about engaging, he thinks about that vulnerability, and then he pulls back. He doesn't quite make that move. It's such a small moment, but such a human moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Truth.
And so, you have this, like you talk about those scenes back to back, right? And the sharing of scars and all of that. But I'm sitting here listening to Quint and I'm thinking, this guy really hates sharks, right? And he's got a reason for really hating sharks. And is he Captain Ahab?
He is.
And it's like any shark will do. like I want to eliminate sharks. And so there's something there about about wounds we carry and our desire to eradicate that, not merely for other people, but for ourselves to deliver some sort of punishment.
Yeah.
Even though this is clearly not the same shark. Right.
That's voracious.
But I want to get even.
It's clearly not the same shark. And still, so that shows you that he's not trying to exert his vengeance on any specific animal. It's gone into a totally different realm.
But also find absolution.
Talk about that.
Well, he's had this experience, and he is like these things cost so many lives, and there's always this thing, like, I want to keep this thing from happening to anyone else. Survivor's guiltiness around it. And if I can do that now for these people, what I couldn't do on the Indianapolis, right? Like what eluded me there.
I may not have a full point here because it's just now occurring to me, but is there something to, so the line I think of with Quint is when he's in that first, city meeting, and he makes his proposal. And when he heads back out into the wilderness as this prophet of sorts, he says, there are too many captains on this island.
Yeah.
Like that's his primary issue with this place. I can't operate here. And I can't operate on the ocean where I really want to be, because that's where the sharks are. Like there's this sense of territory that comes up quite a bit. It's talked about in the documentary. It's certainly all over the film. Like, what is home? Whose home is this? We're now entering into the sharks' domain. And Quint is a character that I find fascinating because he is someone that does not seem to feel a sense of belonging anywhere. So where does a person like that find their rootedness?
Yeah. He's a totally displaced man for exactly those reasons. Like his vengeance keeps him away at some point. He's a man who in practicality has gone overseas to fight for his home in a very violent ways, part of a mission that just destroys a city. And as was said, experiences a lot of pain in that, comes home and is clearly an outsider.
Yeah.
And this is, by the way, Vietnam vets coming home at this point in time. I bet you may have a little bit of that going on here. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say the piece about Vietnam vets coming back. And so you are in 1975 and this is a man without a country who has given his life to fight for a country, and no one understands him. And so farewell and adieu to old Spanish ladies, right? So cinephiles will know that plays a prominent role in the movie Master and Commander. There's this great scene where the crew is singing that same song. But what that song indicates is these are people, when someone sings that song, what they are saying is, I'm a sailor. And I'm a sailor at war. For we've received orders from old England, like we hope in a short time to see you again. That is a sailor song who is going off to battle, who has been called off to battle. That's when they sing it. Farewell and adieu to the old Spanish ladies. Right. And so this is how he has not returned home. Home doesn't want him.
Yeah.
And he can't return anyway, because he is a man made for the sea.
Am I wrong in thinking that he starts singing to escape pain when in a tense situation? It's almost like he elevates, smiles a bit, and as you're saying, like it's almost like I'm reminding myself that there's something foundational that I stake my sense of self on.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I think it's him coming home to himself. Like it's this reminder, like I am a sailor going off to battle, and the battle is here now.
Yeah. That's good. That's real good. I'm not sure there's much more to say on the Ahab front, but it's certainly there. If you've read Moby Dick, man without a leg, trying to kill the
his
beast
white whale. Like the white whale has just become a great white shark. And I know Spielberg's doing that on purpose. Like that's not accidental.
Truth. I went down the unfortunate rabbit hole of looking at war trophies and men who collect things like ears or scalps or really horrendous things from the battle. But that's what his whole home is filled in essence with war trophies of all these shark mouths. And they're not human, but it is the same kind of principle at work, that he's still a soldier collecting these very graphic bits of his enemy and hanging them on his wall.
That may segue, and this may be shifting a bit into like the public reception and kind of what this how the audience is now in dialogue with this piece of art. That I noted in the documentary that there was a gigantic spike in not shark attacks, but attacks on sharks. There was shark hunting.
Oh yeah,
when skyrocketed in people taking the exact wrong reading, the exact wrong message, perhaps from the film, because there's something to that sense of like, how many trophies even is enough? When do we know that this enemy is vanquished, and with something that is unseeable, unknowable as the sea, in all of its depth and expanse, like that, how can you ever feel like I'm safe here? That's I think the central fear that played on people in 1975. It continues to in this day. It was the tagline: "You will be afraid to go back in the water." And I think that there's something to that. We can never know when we're at the end of this theoretical horror.
Yeah. Well, can we talk about that in mid-70s paranoia movies?
Please.
Because it is and this is it coming home, right? So you have movies like The Parallax View, you have The French Connection, you have The Conversation, you have Jaws, and at root, all of these films are about, you gotta remember, we're coming out of Watergate, we're coming out of Vietnam, spy agency stuff. You've lost Kennedy, you've lost King, like in a relatively short amount of time, from the 60s to 1975. And I mean, remember when Jaws 2 came out? What was the tagline? Is it safe to go back into the water? Right. And so there is this window of time where the American public was paranoid about everything. And what is closer to the heart of white America than you can't even take your family to the beach, right? Because there's something there that'll get you to. And maybe that's why it becomes the first blockbuster, because Parallax View and these other movies are nibbling around the edges of what people feel, The Conversation, nibbling around the edges of what people feel, but bam, this is what's really eating away at your spirit, is that you don't know what's safe and anything can get you.
It's well said.
This would be the big theme that I would want to talk about, is the fear of the unseen. And y'all will know the story of this movie, that the shark doesn't work. And so they got to figure out a different way. And they stumble on something that is truly brilliant, of a way of filmmaking, of making you terrified of something you can't see.
Mhm.
And I know you guys know this, like in terms of like animals that kill human beings, sharks are like number 82 on the list, you know. And but most of those other animals that can kill you aren't sea creatures.
Mhm.
They're on the land, and you see them and you're not afraid of them because it's a mosquito, it's a dog, you know, it's a hippopotamus, apparently.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you said mosquitoes,
Yeah,
because like that's the thing. If an animal's going to kill you, it's most likely going to be a mosquito.
it's gonna be a mosquito.
You don't have
But
to
we're
worry
not-
about that where you live, Jeff, but that is a daily worry here.
Yes,
This-
it is.
So-
we had a West Nile warning just this last weekend
Oh my gosh.
in my area, but this is points to something deep in humanity, and we could probably even talk about the sea in the scriptures at some point here. But the unseen, what is beneath the surface that you can't see, and that being the thing that just grabs hold of something really primal in us. This movie, I think that's really a message of this movie, is that so often we fear what's unseen, and we absolutely shouldn't, you know. But we need to do business with that.
Well, I mean, so the one scripture that I pulled for my notes here, which I think is kind of funny in that it's somewhat ironic given what you just said, is 1 Peter 5, 8. Humble yourselves, therefore, 6-8. Humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him, because he cares for you. Discipline yourselves. Keep alert, like a roaring lion or a swimming shark. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around looking for someone to devour. Like we've been, those of us who have grown up in the church, families of faith, many of us have been given a very fearful orientation to the world. So is that something that's been conditioned within us to fear the unseen? And how do we reckon with that?
Well, my friend Jason Miller, who planted and leads South Bend City Church, right, talks about this a lot with Leviathan, which is a very prominent figure in the Old Testament. And so the writers of ancient scripture, like that was the scariest thing that they could imagine, like the thing that you can't see. And I wonder if now, because we talked about COVID and we talked about sharks and we've talked about the characters in this movie, is the scariest thing now not what we can't see, but what we can't understand, right? Is like we don't like there's this conversation in the movie about the splashing around on the beach that people do, like that calls sharks, by the way. You might want to chill out on all of that, but like it doesn't make sense to us, and so we're terrified of it. But throughout scripture, this sea creature, and I think Jason's probably in the right ballpark here, because you weren't sailing around the world. The sea was a place you understood the least, becomes the terror. And that there is probably something like snakes is almost like primordial or maybe evolutionary about, we fear that because it comes from the darkness, it comes from the deep, and we don't know what it's going to do, and we don't know enough about it to predict what it's going to do. And so it is this avatar for all of our fears, and probably maybe even our own darkness, that there's a darkness inside of us individually that sometimes just comes out and we don't even know where it comes from, and we don't understand it either.
And I've been navigating that with my daughter, my 10-year-old daughter of late, and she and I are wired very similarly. Our emotions are often kind of close to the surface, and she has been really trying to kind of understand herself and her own volatility in that way. And she's like, I don't know why I'm like this. I don't, but she, and my spiritual director will call it, we all get captured. No, we are captured by this darkness that will carry us away. And it's interesting to me that we've talked about the morality, or not the morality, the motive behind these characters, or be they these three primary figures or the townsfolk, the mayor. But I think we fear that shark, within us, this kind of dead-eyed. You can't really read what it really even wants, other than just to feed, to attack. It's not even necessarily even feeding per se. Like we just don't know. And I think that we all have that place within us. No question.
One of the commentaries I was listening to in prep was from the great Steve Morris, who does the Cinephiles podcast. And he used to do shark documentaries. And one of the points that he makes in commenting on Jaws was, we are so scared of sharks being near us when we're in the water, the thrashing and the rest. And he pointed out that every time you're in the ocean, there's a shark nearby. But we don't know that they don't want to eat us. Because if they did want to take a chunk out of us, they absolutely would. And it just doesn't happen very often because we're not the thing they're targeting. Especially in a culture like ours, that in which it's so easy to spread disinformation that just terrifies you. I'm finding this, like, I'm the target right now of a lot of disinformation in terms of people in public office and what should and should not be thought about them. And I'm consistently trying to get my bearings but it's all playing. I feel it in myself of people preying on my fears for views, for clicks, for mental allegiance. And it strikes me as a very confusing time on those fronts.
Mm-hmm. Do we want to shift and talk about anything else around the film itself? The music, the public reception. I think there's the awards piece. I know that that's not really what we're here to talk about, but I think there's a couple of interesting details there.
But before we do, the only thing that I would love to talk about before we get into that is the motive of Hooper and the motive of Brody. If you all had any thoughts on that, I find Hooper a really interesting character. Because he's not there for vengeance. He's there for fascination and interest. Like, he's just so enthusiastic about these creatures that once destroyed his boat, kind of the opposite image. He had this gift and this shark destroyed this gift that he was given. And then he wanted to just understand it.
I found this so fascinating, the scene when Quint is like being shipped off to go and hunt down the shark, and Hooper's like, you're gonna need some extra hands, and I'm like, maybe I wouldn't be saying that.
Yeah, right.
Like, you're gonna need some extra hands. Are you gonna hire somebody? But it is this sort of, it's almost, he's the purist in their pursuit of the shark because he's fascinated by it, both personally and scientifically. He's got nothing to gain from it. And everything to lose by it. Mm-hmm. So, I'm not sure what Spielberg is doing there. I know that he, at that season, really loved Richard Dreyfuss for a lot of different reasons. I find Richard Dreyfuss an odd person to have become a movie star. Like, but God bless him. But he's, of all the people, he's got the purest motives, and that he just wants to know what's driving this, and he gets more fascinated at every step. And there is a little bit about wonder in his character that I find interesting.
I feel like Cooper is Spielberg in this movie. Yeah. I feel like he's overcoming his fear through curiosity and understanding and enthusiasm at some level, but occasionally it really hits. Yeah,
I mean, he's the character I can't get a quite as much of a read on, because it does seem so surface level, but there is that important element of he has it's not just an awe, but it is a genuine appreciation for the natural world and the recognition that we are entering into these spaces where we don't belong necessarily. We don't set the rules and the parameters, and there is that fear of how do we how do we coexist? How do we enter into this unforeseen space and
Yeah.
to do so with no, with a eye for knowledge and understanding, but also he too eventually has to realize, oh, this natural world is in direct confrontation with us, and so those principles also need to find a healthy point of leaving them behind in light of the immediate threat.
Isn't that what the shark cage is about? It's like it's a desire for coexistence at some level.
Yeah.
But I mean, one of the big themes of the movie, right, is nature versus human control. And
Yeah,
so
there you go.
for the first half of the movie, you've got humans trying to exert our control over something that resists our control because we don't know what it wants. It doesn't reason the way that we reason, and it has its own pursuits that we cannot manipulate. And so how do you respond to that? Do you just say, hey, nobody ever goes into the water? Do you get into a cage where you make an overture for connection, or do you just going to have to kill it? And
is that the message when like turning? There's a line that's something about how much sense does it make for somebody who's afraid of the water to live on an island? And Brody says something like, "It's only an island if you look at it from the ocean."
yeah,
Something like that. There's the lack of being able to see yourself. You're looking at the things that might get you. These are evolutionary machines. All they do is feed and create little baby sharks. But the ability to look at yourself, you are also designed by evolution into fight for your. You talked about reasoning. You can't reason with a shark. Can you reason with the mayor? Is it not the case that he's looking out for his little baby sharks and passing on, allowing them to feed? And the whole movie is about the fact that his kids, his culture needs to be able to feed.
Well, maybe that is, I think this film makes a really interesting choice in terms of its ending. And I think it speaks a little to what you're getting at here, Jeff, in that, we face these big, evils, or maybe it's the pandemic, and we can't exactly agree with how we're supposed to go about it, but it seems like it's, the tide has ebbed for the time being. But I think that we all have the recognition somewhere that any gain is somewhat temporary in that regard. I love the choice after the shark is defeated, that there's no fanfare. They don't return to the dock to great celebration. The movie just ends. And the question is like, what day is it? Tuesday? Wednesday? Okay. I guess we'll keep swimming. The tide is with us for today. And maybe that's all we can ask for is safety and peace and maybe even a, swimmable beach today. But sooner or later, the next threat is going to bear its head.
Well, last character is Brody of the Trinity, as was said. I do think that there is a Trinity here of the heart, mind, and body going on. Hooper coming to the world mentally. Quint is very physical, anger driven. I feel like Brody's the heart of this movie. Cares for his kids, cares for his wife, cares for the people. Is a good man and makes decisions from that space. That was my take on Brody.
Yeah, I think that my primary thing with the character Brody is that sometimes you need the outsider to show the system what it cannot or will not see. And, he is, I love that he does not feel like the most capable or confident character, but he is faithful to the task at hand and the role that he has accepted. And I love the vulnerability. One of my favorite moments in the film is just that little moment with his son, give us a kiss. Why? Because I need it. Because I need it. Because I'm about to, because I'm going fishing and I don't know when or if I'm going to be back.
Well, I think you're right. I was just ruminating on what you said about that scene and what happens in so many modern movies is that they forget that these characters are supposed to be humans and that the people watching the movie are humans, and they want a reason to care about these people.
Yes.
And so they have to be like, characters don't even have to be likable. They just have to be people that we care somewhat about. I think so many of the movies this summer that failed, I'm thinking Materialist to some degree, Fantastic Four, like, I just don't care about these people. Like, and there's nothing like, I don't know, sacrifice that little boy in Fantastic Four. I don't care about that boy.
I think the word you're looking for is recognizable. These characters are not recognizable as human.
Yeah, like, okay, fine, whatever. I know I'm supposed to care about infants, but like, in the scope of this movie, a lot of people are going to die. Why shouldn't he be one of them? And like, that's one of the master strokes. Like, so Spielberg does this over and over again, right? And even in a movie that's not a great movie like Jurassic Park Rebirth this summer, like, you've got this family out on the high seas. Like, you've got to get them onto the park with Scarlett Johansson, because if there aren't kids, we don't care about whether these people are going to make it off this island and collect millions of dollars for their own coffers. The same thing in the original Jurassic Park. Like, my grandchildren are coming. They're going to be the first to see it. Like, well, we care about the vulnerable. And so that scene makes both characters, adult and child, vulnerable. And so it really matters whether or not they come back. We certainly don't care if Quint comes back. We kind of care if Hooper comes back. But like, now there's something to live for. It's no coincidence that the first person to die in this film is just some frolicking teenagers, because everybody goes, oh yeah, whatever. Like, that's bad, but okay.
And that's kind of what sets it apart.
Teenagers.
That sets it apart as a horror film, like, because that first scene is following the rules of, any one of these slasher films. You don't drink on the beach, and you don't have sex, and you certainly don't go skinny dipping in the ocean. But that's where Spielberg makes, and I think he's even stated that he wouldn't do this now. But the next thing that happens is the violent death of this 12-year-old boy. That, and it's when you know that it's just two crew members just popping him up and down out of the water as they're spraying fake blood. It takes some of the hit off, but there is an immediacy and a daring that does not happen in. Certainly, blockbuster storytelling with any regularity, or most story. You don't kill kids in movies. This is
right,
and this is. I think
you don't kill kids, and you really don't kill dogs.
Yeah, and you show them early on that everyone is in danger. I think that is a master stroke of what Spielberg did with the film.
This is, I don't know, this is a stretch. One of my favorite elements of the Gospels is the fact that in 3 different Gospels, there are 3 resurrections of people. One is a young girl, one is a teenage boy, and one is a friend. And these are the deaths that we really hit us, of the very, very young, of the teenage filled with potential person, or the person that we're very, very close to. Like when I'm, sometimes when we lose somebody who's like a parent who's elderly, who it's their time, you can understand that. But I feel like there's some of that logic going on as the young boy gets hit by the shark, the teenage girl gets hit by the shark, and we feel that at a different kind of level, and it gives us a little bit of investment, even though we don't know these people. As I say that, it is a stretch, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Hey, I'm with it. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Let's talk shop about the movie making and all the biz.
I'm curious if this tags anything for you guys. So, massive success, obviously, and if made in our day, my guess is that it would have, been one of the kind of higher ups in the, Oscar nomination charts and all that. This film received 4 Oscar nominations. It won 3: editing, the score, as well as I just had it with me. What was the third one? Production design? No, it wasn't production. Sound. There you go. Sound, score. And then it was nominated for Best Picture not famously for best director. So Steven Spielberg, he's coming off of he is the wonderkind of Hollywood. He's come out with Duel, Sugarland Express, and this is this big crowning moment, and he is being filmed by some friends on the morning of Oscar nominations, and he is passed over, seemingly for Federico Fellini, I believe. But if you've seen the video, you just see Spielberg crestfallen. And so much of it is like, oh, I got in my own head. I started to believe, all of this was just a matter of that it was already done. And I heard him talk about that Oscar night and watching his editor accept the award, watching John Williams accept the award, the sound designers to accept their awards. And I think there was something that really shifted for Spielberg in that moment. And if anything, I think that this is what, blockbuster movie making has to say for us as those who hope to live in collaborative communities, is that it can't happen alone, especially a project on this kind of scale. And just as, Quint and Brody and Hooper begin to see one another as bringing their own, histories and their giftedness and their passions to this group project, so to speak. There's something there in the movie making that is worth naming, that these things don't happen, that we don't engage with them as an audience without the work of the unseen work of hundreds, if not thousands, of technicians and artists. And, and that goes to, go see the movies, support the art you believe in, because, this is the livelihood for a lot of folks, and it's worth it because these stories are how we continue to speak the things that we believe matter about living as a whole lot of different people living in a really complicated world.
I don't know how to frame the Oscars and their poor choices. I don't know. I don't understand how all that system works. Like, what are you even assessing in terms of best director? And even the best picture, like the greatness of Cuckoo's Nest, isn't that the one that won that year?
Yeah, the other nominees, I'll put it out here because it is kind of a murderer's row. You got One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest. Right. You got Barry Lyndon, Stanley Kubrick, Dog Day Afternoon, Jaws, and Robert Altman's Nashville. There is not a dud in that crop for sure.
How do you? There's almost different levels of greatness between just Cuckoo's Nest.
Okay,
and Jaws.
at some point though, we're gonna have a conversation about the overratedness of Barry Lyndon. Like, I just think we just need to, need to burst the bubble.
Hurt me deeply there,
of just like the cinephile community's deep affection for Barry Lyndon. Like, come on.
He used no artificial light, Sean, right?
I just need to get that on the record. It's not that it's not a great film and not a classic. But if you're going to sit down tonight and rewatch a movie, if you hadn't just rewatched Jaws, would you rather rewatch Jaws or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest? Like, just be honest.
Jaws.
Okay. Yeah, I would absolutely want to rewatch Jaws.
But that's the other thing.
Cuckoo's Nest is brutal.
And this is also why we're going to, dig back into the history of film in addition to talking about the newer releases, because, they undergo a critical reevaluation as the years go by. And they also just change their resonance with the state of the world as the years goes by as well. It just makes it fun to revisit. It does speak, as we've talked about with it, even the pandemic gives you a different spin on it, but the central core of us being at odds with the environment and powerful interests being drawn by money over the common good, like these are themes that are evergreen,
timeless. Yep.
This is actually what hit me going back to Jaws, was watching it. It's not that the movie has changed, and it's not even that the world has changed. It's that I've changed. Brody's wife used to be a much older woman in my mind coming to this movie. And when I watched it this time, I was like, holy crap, she is 15 years younger than I am. You know? And getting my head around that was some contortion.
I hate to break it to you, Jeff. We're the old people now.
But it's also like when you come, this
I'm
is
not
one of the
going.
great things
Why
about
am I not
art.
going to the beach? I'm not going all the way out there in the water. Why aren't you in the water? I don't want to. That's why. I'm going to sit here and read this book.
One of the delights and the reason that you should watch the movies again or even read the books again is that the book hasn't changed. The movie hasn't changed. The piece of art hasn't changed, but you changed. And it probably is going to say something very different to you that might be unexpected. I suppose that might be a final word for me on this. You guys got a final take on this film?
Jaws re-releases in IMAX this Friday, August 29th. And no better time to go get your first look or a revisit if it is overdue. That's what I would say. That's what I'm doing.
Are you guys going to go?
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Go to the theater. Come on.
If I need a nap, I will probably just drive up there. I found it, this rewatch, to be pretty, like, I was scrolling through my phone for a good chunk of the second act. But that's after having rewatch. I mean, like, I just did another rewatch of this like maybe a year ago. So it was still relatively fresh.
So I do have one final thought, though. And we, ostensibly we had talked about this in somewhat dialogue with Weapons. This was kind of our horror module of sorts. We didn't really get, fully into that category. But I did watch this film with my 12-year-old son, his first viewing of it, and I got to tell you, it holds up from that standpoint. Yes. The head in the ship. The fisherman that the big jump scare, it gets me every time. And it shook both me and Miles very much to our core. It took him a full 2 minutes to kind of recover. He had to crawl next to me and kind of breathe a bit. So still effective. I'll have you know.
I heard a fun fact about this. They were doing test screenings with the head and without the head. They got a much bigger jump overall from the head versus the shark coming out during the come down here and chum this scene. But when the head is removed, and when they don't have that, and you just have the shark as the first jump scare, the shark got a much bigger jump because apparently people were then conditioned to look out for the jump scare after the head scene. But that was my experience watching it also with my kid. 10 years ago, we watched Jaws, and he got done with it, and he said, "I think that was the best movie I've ever seen." And
I could not convince my 21-year-old to watch it with me. She was like that looks so boring, and God bless her, she will sit down and watch almost anything.
Yeah, she's one of us. She's a Letterboxd girl. Come on.
The shark eating the naked woman on the poster, that doesn't.
She's like, no, I just and I had this feeling this is when my dad would want me to watch some World War II movie that was made in 1952 when I was a kid, and I was like, oh, good Lord. It was like, do you want to watch Tora, Tora, Tora with me, son? I was like, no, absolutely not.
So, total footnote, by the way, Jaws may get my vote for best movie poster ever. I'm trying to think of anything that competes with this, but man, they just home run on the movie poster.
Well, we should maybe do an episode on the best movie posters, because immediately for me, V for Vendetta, Braveheart come to mind as great movie posters. The iconic Star Wars with Luke and the lightsaber, with a light shooting straight up. That's a great movie poster as well.
I might have to ding Jaws just a touch, because it is the paperback cover just transposed to the movie poster. It still works. Original image, maybe. I don't know. It's
a great post. Well, why try to improve on perfection?
Yes.
Then it's there.
Just if all you need is 2 notes, play those 2 notes.
That's right.
Well, is that the last word?
Last word.
Gentlemen, he's Sean Palmer. He's movie Mike Yeager, and I'm Jeff Cook. It's been Sacred Frames. We'll see you next
See you
time.
soon.
Where are we picking up with next time? We got another. We're doing Sinners.
A little bonus up. We're staying in the horror mode because we've got a little bit of a length of time before the next new release on our calendar. One battle after another. Paul Thomas Anderson and Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of September. So yeah, look for Sinners in a couple weeks. We'll have a lot to say.
We will have to do a parental guidance for Sinners.
Perhaps.
All right, gentlemen, next time.
All right.